Most of us, who have lived through long hours and sobered our minds to reality, live with deep-seated grief for our loss of innocence. Specifically, the innocence that has been destroyed by our experience. We invoke reflective meditations on memories of past moments, realizing there is little hope for the future and holding the truth of suffering self-evident to the wise. No, to the realist. That is to say, at first we view the suffering in life like a child who hopes for better days. But with age and reflection, we realize that the better days will most likely never arrive. We were continuously waiting for an imminent future that had been disposed of long ago, and as we waited, we grew deeply resentful for our past hopes that never came, the false ideals we reached for in vain. So, as a result, we contemplate this loss of hope and suffer in our mourning. The ordinary life grows bleak and unbearable. We find ourselves leaning upon the apartment windowsill, gazing through the grimy glass as the slow and solemn clouds weigh upon the light of the sun. A slightly ashen atmosphere befalls the landscape's brow, and the dark mist surrounding encloses in on the clouds, slowly floating along in dreary patterns of inept travel. The sun beams its rays a distance, devoid of the darkness that's ever looming. And in this stagnant, storm-swept scenery, we project the dismal innocence we held in our starting days. The fantastical fantasies we dreamt so vividly, our aspirations were like the sun, shining upon our backs, felt so very strongly by the clouds. And now we could care less. Ourselves, like the weather, are practically indifferent to the hopes beholden to the longing of our soul. There once was a point where our intrinsic motivations were robust and founded in the dawning light of tomorrow, but now are that of clouds, still and inept. Furthermore, the unfathomable, stupendous quantity of torment that lays upon the face of the earth destroys any inward drive for joy. Our remembrance of a time before, a time characterized by beauty and bliss, haunts our present moment, looms over our dainty and tired spirits, and shines its light upon them, only for its radiance to be consumed in the darkness of those caught amidst the storm. Surely it was not that the past was objectively better. Instead, this demonstrates that our history was solely perceived through an idealized delusion. This is directly caused by the ignorance of our past self. We did not understand the deep sufferings of the world because we were sheltered from infancy. We are blinded at birth to the harsh realities of nature, and further blinded in the hands of civilization, being shielded from the kindred, demanding forces of Mother Nature. These unforeseen forces are united in the causation of suffering. Therefore, as we grow to adulthood, Mother Nature begins to reveal her ugly face, tearing away and corrupting the unvarnished naivety of adolescence. But as a result of the culminating forces of nature and subsequent loss of naivety, the man has grown weak and wearisome. His mind is fractured and body aching, multiplicitous in thought and emotion. This is in stark contrast to the universal congruence of nature. His brain fractures in different interpretations of reality, a pluralized mess of conceptualizations. He cannot handle the many systems his mind uses to understand the world around him, such as his intellectual perception of reality colliding against his emotional understanding of reality, resulting in a great clash between how man wishes to see the world and the tragic realization his intellect lays bare. Man grows ambivalent between the interpretations of reality subsequent of his innocence and that stemming from adulthood, resulting in his desires deeply conflicting with what his perception details. In this state, man seeks reprieve, mourning the destruction of our innocence, for the truth is too insufferable to loathe. When man's excessive lucidity turns on him, he begins to accurately realize the ruined naivety that once defined him, mourning and filling up with sorrow, wishing for a droplet of water in the depths of Gehenna. This, I believe, is a realized conception of man's relation to nature, that in a similar fashion to how tectonic plates accumulate friction and result in utter destruction, so does the knowledge of man conflict with his desires and leads to the catastrophic annihilation of innocence. Yet, as a result of man's sorrow, he is filled with a strong indignation to the reality of nature, habitually bearing the weight of suffering on a cosmic scale. Oh, how deeply much of mankind meditates on the trials of existence. It is like the poetic, pessimistic philosopher Peter Wessel Zapffe stated, "From the moment the child embarks on his journey down the river of life, the roar of death's waterfall fills the valley. Always nearer and nearer, it gnaws at the child's happiness." As you can imagine, the sober individuals in society find it extremely difficult to cope and progress with this looming realization. So many of those unlucky enough to be exiled from bliss look towards reinterpreting or presenting nature in a diluted manner, suppressing the negative aspects in order to highlight the positive ones, and finding much comfort in this diluted practice. I do not believe this to be an ethical failure, even if it is deceptive. Instead, I view it as a psychological method for coping, a way to find reprieve amidst our grief. For this very reason, Mother Nature is often depicted by the general public as a halcyon and ever-giving parent. Books often highlight the more beautiful and breathtaking aspects of nature and frame it as her bountiful instinct. For example, narratives spend pages describing a lush and brightly lit spring forest, selectively riding on the sway of leaves through serene and idyllic landscapes, reflecting upon the unblemished smell of wind and immense freedom brought about by the abundance of promise. This type of presentation has been done ad nauseum, written thousands of times over, so much so that now it is a cliche to parody the cliche itself. This continuous representation of the wilderness has led many to underestimate or forget the unwavering and violent structure of nature. For instance, the constant personification of nature as an unstinting mother leads many to believe that nature is bountiful or ever-giving. And this is undoubtedly true. Mother Nature is in no way restrictive with the immense physical torment brought about by her indifferent demeanor. She is unsparing in continuously assailing the starving and fragile organisms unlucky enough to exist. What unsettling sadist would claim nature to be anything but the inexorable deprivation of solace? As well, many of the individuals who consume media depicting such falsified delusions also place their settlement in urbanized environments. They awake to loud, blaring horns and the mechanical chugs of engines. Furthermore, spend much of their day in enclosed man-made structures we call buildings, insulating their knowledge of the non-metropolitan world. These two factors culminate and result in civilized man existing unremittingly ignorant to the organic reality of Earth, instead opting for facial fantasies of a paradise lost long ago in the minds of ancient men and children. This idealized depiction of Mother Nature is an urban legend, analogous to modern man's version of the Garden of Eden. But instead of talking snakes or life-giving trees, we visualize a serene cabin in the woods, a delusional symbol of our innocence to the harsh conditions of Mother Nature. This romanticization and man's epistemic relation to it serves as an example for my thesis. Man is born innocent to the sufferings of the world, and through continued exposure to Mother Nature will, in a conceptual manner, realize the immense suffering and calamity of our reality, which results in him involuntarily actualizing the effects of this realization into his psyche, therefore living the rest of his days in a sorrowful melancholy, estranged from the joy that characterized his prologue to existence, leaving him in utter deprivation of ecstasy, an existential state of quietude. In this state, man gazes out his grimy apartment windowsill, peering into the bleak and surrounding atmosphere of existence. Mourning the exile of innocence.